I don't want to use hyperbole, but it's...
Yes, we do. It feels like we're in the middle of what the 80s were. The men's basketball team, there's talk of Final Four. The football team, they're hoping to compete for a Big 12 title. The Olympic sports are amazing. This is a golden era. We are in it in BYU sports.
I don't think people understand how bad BYU football was.
It's so bad.
When LaVell Edwards took over, to the point where he was saying things like, well, I might as well try something crazy like, throwing the football when nobody else is throwing the football. The most visible aspect of what BYU is as a university is what sports fans see on social media and on national television. I mean, that is often their entry point into what the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is.
Welcome to the Y Magazine podcast, where we share ideas, stories, and voices from Brigham Young University. I'm Whitney Archibald. BYU has a big birthday this year, 150 years, and the athletic program has been a big part of BYU's legacy. So today we're talking to BYU alumni Spencer Linton and Jarom Jordan, who you probably recognize from your own living room TV as the host of BYU TV's Sports Nation. They're here to talk to us about the history of BYU sports, the players, the highlights, and the impact of the BYU athletic legacy. I started our conversation with a peek into Jarom and Spencer's personal history with BYU sports. When did you first become BYU fans?
So my earliest vivid memories of being a BYU fan probably fall in the late 80s. 1987, 1988, when I remember names like Michael Smith and Jeff Chapman and Marty Hawes with BYU basketball and Andy Toolson. I remember watching those teams with my family. And as far as football goes, same time frame, right around the time that Sean Covey and Ty Detmer were both on the same roster with BYU football, and things didn't go very well for Sean. So in comes this gangly freshman kid from Texas, and he's starting as a freshman, and then he becomes the eventual Heisman Trophy winner. So that was the time frame for me. And I remember it was destination viewing for my family on an old Zenith television. It was hey, let's order pizza from our favorite local pizza joint, and my dad would make his famous popcorn where he used the old school popcorn popper. Nice. And then he'd add butter and salt, and we would watch these games like that. It was a family event gathered around the single television we had with rabbit ears, and that's kind of where the foundation of my BYU fandom started.
How about you, Jarom?
I didn't grow up in Utah until I was 11, so I don't have a lot of young memories of rooting for BYU, but I do remember when I was 7 or 8 riding to Santa Claus to help Ty Detmer and BYU win the Holiday Bowl against Iowa. I do remember that. They actually tied, but that's my earliest recollection was 91. When I moved to Utah in 95, my mom took me to the BYU Utah game, and I was hooked after that.
I have similar memories. I lived in California, so we could get KSL if we'd have to tune it after the sun went down. We could tune it in and get like a scratchy.
There's Paul James. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, whenever it was televised in any way, we'd all gather at the church because they had satellite and we could all watch it. And there was a lot of hooting and hollering and rowdiness.
I do remember in 94 when BYU played on NBC, I was like, oh, I can watch this. And that was a big deal. That was very exciting. And they won, and it was very exciting in the neighborhood. But, it's a different era. Like, I think about how my kids are growing up. BYU's in the Big 12, and A.J. DeBonsa is at BYU. Like, it is a totally different situation. We were in the wilderness.
Yes.
If you will. And now they're in the promised land. So it's exciting for them.
I'd like to talk about just the early days. What do you know about the pioneers in BYU sports back when it was just starting?
Oh, wow.
I mean, if you're going, so the athletic department says we started playing football in 1922. In baseball, they say, hey, there actually were some games in the 1890s. In basketball, they say 1905. Really? So it kind of depends who you ask on what sport. I love the history of this. I've read a bunch. I've been in special collections with the white gloves. I've held photos and looked at books. Like the fact that They're at BYU originally up there on Temple Hill, they called it, where the testing center is. That was the spot, and they had kind of a track and football field there that later kind of moves to where the Richards Building is, and that's Y Stadium until '64, and then they move to where the current facility is, Cougar Stadium, LaVell Edwards Stadium. Smith Fieldhouse is constructed in '51 for like 20 years, and then the Marriott Center. Like, I love all this stuff. Like Alma Richards wins the high jump in 1912. He's a BYU high school student, Brigham Young High School, and he goes and wins an Olympic gold. There's a lot of history there, but it really doesn't like turn a corner for football until LaVell. This was a basketball school for a long time. They won the NIT in '51, '66. Yep. They built the Marriott Center. It's this massive arena they called the Big Mac, because it was the Marriott Activities Center.
Okay.
Forever. Like, I go on all day.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic summation by Jarom. But just thinking about some of the incredible legendary athletes that have been to Provo and played in these buildings, it's talking about basketball. The fact that, an NBA legend, one of the greatest players to ever play the game, Bill Russell, the fact that he was in the Smith Fieldhouse playing with the University of San Francisco against BYU, and BYU was a good basketball school.
BYU won in 52 against him.
I think it was 1966 when they won the NIT championship. They ran out with the famous pregame jackets that just said Mormons, right?
they toured in 51 in Brazil with the jacket that said Mormons. Yeah.
But yeah, some really, really fun stories. And I don't think people understand how bad BYU football was.
It's so bad.
When LaVell Edwards took over, to the point where he was saying things like, well, I might as well try something crazy like, throwing the football when nobody else is throwing the football, because how bad could it possibly get? Like, what's the worst that could happen? They could fire me in a few years like they've fired every other head coach. Who cares? Whatever. And he's credited for changing in many ways how football is played to this day. Like, launching.
It had to be football, because in this modern era, if you do just basketball, you're getting left behind. Like this building that we are in, the broadcasting building, I don't think it exists if football doesn't do what it does. And BYU's not in the Big 12. They don't have compelling football. It has raised all boats. And BYU is lucky to have had a guy like LaVell Edwards.
He was at first an assistant coach, but then eventually, after a little more than a decade, became the head coach at BYU. And so that was a momentous thing to happen to BYU, and everything that has evolved from that decision. And it led to incredible accomplishments. They win a national championship in 1984, and it's like, wait, who? Provo, Utah? Like, what is this team? Like, how did they do this? How did they pull the shade over everyone's eyes and work their way into the number one spot?
Heisman Trophy is massive. That's the second biggest moment in BYU football history to me. 1990, Ty Detmer. 1981 was a banner year for BYU sports. When you look at best year, just straight up year, I think it's 81. That's Elite Eight, Danny Ainge. That's Jim McMahon's senior year in football. They go 11-2, and that's men's golf national title. So he kind of had three things there, which is pretty good.
Wow.
Last couple of years, BYU's kind of challenged that a few times, where this last year you have an amazing season in football, 11-2, Sweet 16 in basketball, and then you have individual national champions and team in track and field. You have greatness. Cross country, you win both natties. That was pretty good. Like, BYU's challenging. It feels like we're in the middle of what the 80s were. A national championship certainly would be amazing, but the men's basketball team, there's talk of Final Four. The football team, they're hoping to compete for a Big 12 title. The Olympic sports are amazing. This is a golden era. We are in it in BYU sports.
Well, let's throw in July 1st, 2023, right, Jarom? Like the official inclusion date of BYU becoming a Power 4 school. When that happened, that was an incredibly momentous thing for BYU to finally be invited to a Power 4 conference. And you think about the groundwork that had been laid for decades to finally be in position to do that. So that also, along with what Jarom spoke of, is certainly in the Mount Rushmore of most influential and impactful things that have happened to BYU athletics.
To me, the Big 12 invite is the greatest moment in the history of the university, not just athletics, because it validated everything the school was. Because they didn't just look at athletics; they looked at everything with the school. And then BYU goes 5-7, but this last year 11-2. It really validated that BYU belongs, and they're hoping to kind of answer that right in every sport after this. But they've done a great job.
Great. Well, and that brings me to another topic. Like, how do you think the athletic program of BYU enhances the overall BYU experience?
That is a loaded question. Yeah. Well, if I don't want to use hyperbole, but in many ways,
yes, we do.
The most visible aspect of what BYU is as a university is what sports fans see on social media and on national television. I mean, that is often their entry point into what the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is, and what 2-year missions are for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and what the title return missionary means, and why do these athletes leave when they're at the peak of their athletic powers and dedicate 18 months to 2 years of their lives to go out and do something totally unrelated to sports, and then come back and then get back into it. That these things are becoming more prominent. And so there is pressure involved in representing the university the right way as an athlete at BYU, because it's not just about BYU. It also has a very important religious aspect. The momentum that is happening right now has created a lot of opportunities and missionary opportunities for people to go out and talk about what BYU is. And the church and the school and the athletic program have all kind of worked together cohesively to make it feel like, yeah, this is the place for you. And we welcome all walks of life and faith and diverse backgrounds.
Absolutely. Just to add to that, you have to win to be relevant. And our boy Shane, aka President Reese, has said we have to win to be relevant. And so BYU has leaned into this new era. They could have absolutely said, this all costs too much. No, we're not doing this. But I feel fortunate that BYU has leaned into what athletics can become for the university.
And we're starting to see it in a grand scale. Jarom's talking about these moments where, on national television, high-profile athletes are talking about serving missions and bringing up references to the church. Andy Reid, during Super Bowl Media Day this year, was asked, hey, what's your favorite book trilogy? And he's like, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. This is the head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs at Super Bowl Media Day.
That's the most love the Pearl of Great Price has ever gotten. To me, that's the underrated book, by the way.
Totally.
But just these opportunities for these BYU guys, and Steve Young has been an incredible spokesperson for the church with his athletic platform, but it's becoming more and more common. And Jarom, you and I were talking earlier yesterday about the president of the PGA Tour and Live Golf, both BYU guys.
So since you guys have kind of the privilege to be immersed in this and to meet all these people and meet with the teams, what are some of the specific things that set the culture of BYU sports apart from other teams that you might interact with?
I think there's a connection that goes beyond the game. I think there are real relationships formed here that last a lifetime. That, yes, the vehicle was, hey, you played at BYU or you coached at BYU. But now that we've done the show for more than 12 years and 3,000 episodes, the connections and the relationships that people have through BYU, whether they are members of the church or not, are really, really genuine and sincere. And it sets up people to be transformed through what appears to be a transactional situation when people talk about NIL and revenue sharing and the money involved in sports. Travis Hansen said, we're not looking to be transactional. We are looking to be transformational. And I think people are affected in a great way. Yegor Demin is the latest great example of this. Here's a Russian kid who believes in God, who comes to BYU, doesn't have a lot of connections here, comes to BYU, and he finds that people legitimately care about him, that he has a family here, that he has people who genuinely enjoy him as a person and have relationships for life. he surprised us when he announced that he was going to the NBA. Not that, but that he wanted to finish his degree here. He has a girlfriend from here. He has lifelong friends that go beyond the court. And it's done a ton of good for him. He's going to be an NBA player for a long time.
Yeah, and that's just one example, right? And a fantastic one. Yegor's transformational experience, we've had the privilege to watch kind of happen stage by stage.
Yeah.
It wasn't that long ago that Jarom and I were welcoming him into Studio B at BYU Broadcasting for the first time. And he's nervous, understandably, and English is not his primary language, obviously. But to watch him kind of go from that point to when he's declaring for the NBA draft and talking about how basketball was great and all at BYU, but it's the relationships and what it did for him as a man. Like, he talks about how it transformed his life. It changed his life, not just in basketball, but who he is and how he believes and his faith and his spirituality. And these are things that he's saying. And he felt it so necessary that he called the news conference to say, look, I'm not just going to say I'm declaring for the draft. I have a lot of people I want to thank. He was so gracious. And so pretty fantastic to watch that happen with a young man like that.
That's amazing. So if you're assembling a dinner party, the past or present, coaches, sports, anybody involved in sports at BYU, who are you inviting to this table?
How big's the table?
How many do we get to invite?
Okay, let's do 6.
Okay,
3
6.
each.
I'm bringing McMahon for stories.
Okay.
'Kay.
Jeremy, I want to bring Kreshmer Chosic. I want to invite.
Is it dead or alive?
Yeah, dead or alive.
Dead or alive.
Chosic? Yeah, I would
Yes.
love to chat with Kreshmer Chosic, great basketball player, late 60s, early 70s. The first great international college basketball player. Came to BYU, gets baptized, translates the Book of Mormon into his native language. Later, he's the ambassador of the United States to Croatia. He's one of the most influential people ever from BYU.
Yes.
That's a good one. So, Chosic, McMahon. We got to have LaVell there for sure.
Legend, right?
Yes,
It'd be hard not to have LaVell involved in that somehow.
Do we need Danny and Jimmer?
We're talking
Danny,
about,
I want to hear Celtics stories from the 80s.
Okay. I'm trying to think if there's another clear, like if you just want straight entertainment value, McMahon is a great one.
Entertainment value, Lee Johnson, the former punter, huge personality.
Okay, I think if I'm counting correctly, you have 1 seat left.
Maybe Steve Young, Jarom?
Probably Steve. Steve's the best. Like, he's probably been the greatest ambassador for BYU ever. The only Pro Football Hall of Famer, MVP on ESPN for years. His last name's Young. I mean, come on.
He's the great grandson of Brigham Young.
You got to have a Young doing something national constantly from here.
Yeah.
We'd have to have a whole gym full of tables.
Yep. So, okay, we'll do kind of another superlative type question. If you can travel back in time and attend any single game, what do you want to relive or live for the first time?
Miracle Bowl 1980.
Yeah, that one for me for sure. Like BYU's losing to SMU 45-25 with under 4 minutes to play in the Holiday Bowl. BYU still hasn't won a bowl game at that point. There's a lot of pressure on LaVell Edwards to like win the big game and like punctuate a season with a bowl win. But to watch that team score 21 points in essentially 3.5 minutes and the miracle that went into that, like that, I'm with Jarom. Like that would be incredible to experience, like just being what seemed like humiliated to all of a sudden just jubilant, celebratory. You're losing your mind because it's happening. I'd probably throw in the game in 1990 when Ty Detmer started his Heisman campaign in large part against Miami.
That'd be fun.
We think it's maybe the most valuable or greatest win by nature of who BYU beat and how they beat them in BYU football history. When you take down the number 1 ranked Miami Hurricanes and that Miami team still finished number 3 in the country that year. And again, what it meant to BYU and Ty Detmer. And it frankly, that was a huge piece of why Ty won the Heisman Trophy. Huge launching point. So I've heard from several people that were at the game. It just no atmosphere like it. I'd probably throw that one on the list of a game.
I said he thinks 200,000 people claim they were there, but only 65,000 actually went.
They've replayed it over and over so much that they feel like they were sitting in that stadium.
Yes. 81 Notre Dame would be great, seeing Danny go coast to coast to send BYU to the Elite Eight there. I guess that was in the Sweet 16.
Yeah.
Watching Jimmer again.
Oh, man.
Would be fun. I was there for most of those. I would have loved to have been in the Colorado game, but watching it on TV was great too. I mean, that experience is pretty awesome. Yeah.
Right. We like you said, we're in a golden era of both the quality of the sports, but also the ability to watch them.
It's special. And you're on the greatest networks. Like BYU men's basketball might play a game this year on ESPN, Fox, TNT, CBS Sports Network, and maybe NBC.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That's at play. That could happen, which is crazy.
Exposure.
That exposure is crazy. Oh, the game we probably want to see Chosich in the Marriott Center at some point.
Although I feel like I just need to watch one more in a dark church gym just for old time's sake on a on a small TV. But
really appreciate it, right?
There was something about that too, that experience.
Yes. One time on my mission, a BYU Utah basketball game suddenly turned on right before General Conference, and I was like, I don't feel like I should be watching this, but I am glued. What is happening?
We've talked a lot about basketball and football. What are some of the moments in some of the other sports at BYU that you've covered?
You're talking to the right people. We're the people that call the other sports, and we love them.
Jarom, you should probably talk about, it didn't happen that long ago, the 3-0 comeback win by women's soccer in the NCAA Tournament Elite Eight.
This is the greatest game I've called. In 2023, in the Elite Eight, BYU women's soccer was down at home 3-0 in the first 30 minutes. They come back to win 4-3 to go to the Final Four, scoring with 90 seconds left. It was unbelievable. Unbelievable.
That was so fun. And then for me, calling that match of women's volleyball against number 1 ranked Stanford in a sold-out Smith Fieldhouse. And
2018.
That place, I mean, the roof lifted off the building a few moments. Jarom knows what that's like because he calls so many volleyball matches. And then when that place gets rocking, it is
awesome.
Special. It's one of the greatest places to watch volleyball in the entire world, frankly. But calling those type of matches. So Jarom's talking about beating North Carolina in the tournament. You know, women's volleyball taking on number 1 Stanford. You got to win to be relevant. And BYU has done a lot of that, especially in the Olympic sports at such a high level. And I feel like we have to mention what BYU has done with track and field and cross country and the Olympians that have recently been involved. You're watching Kenneth Rooks win a silver medal in the Paris Olympics. I mean, that was one of the most exciting things that's happened.
That was so good
in the last year. But just to watch BYU ascend and kind of stay atop in those other sports has been really, really gratifying. And this is a great place for women's sports as well. They've accomplished so much and have achieved so much. And the national championships and national prestige, like they deserve the pat on the back.
Whitney, that's been one of the underrated things I think about this job I didn't anticipate is how much fun it would be to learn how to call other sports and get to know these teams. So Spencer and I basically combined to call women's soccer, women's volleyball, gymnastics, women's basketball, a handful of baseball, men's volleyball, and so on and so forth. They have equally compelling stories to football and men's basketball. Just because they don't get the same amount of viewership doesn't mean they don't deserve the same sort of clout or effort. And it's fun to get to know them and see them thrive. And amazing stories, amazing people, coaches. It's been awesome. And shout out to them. They know we love them because we're at practice, we're at games. It's pretty awesome. And I think BYU fans love the Olympic sports more than the average fan. And hopefully we're part of that where they get to know the people. And I think that's important. And BYU fans know the athletes. They're a person with a story, and they're going to be connected to BYU after. And it's fun to be part of that storytelling. It's been awesome. These are some amazing people doing amazing things.
Well, this has been so fun. I love hearing about the history, a lot of things I didn't know, and also can't wait for the future. I guess that's my last question. What are you looking forward to?
Oh, man.
What are we not looking forward to? Is there anything? I think it's everything. Just literally everything that's about to happen.
So I guess I'll answer your question with the question. at this point, what is not possible for BYU athletics, because it feels like they are capable with the right coaches, the right athletes, the right support, the right revenue sharing, NIL backing, boosters. Everything feels like it's working in unity together, rowing in the same direction towards a new level of accomplishment. So I feel like BYU can do just about anything now as we enter further into what we believe is a golden era of Brigham Young University and BYU athletics. I feel like there are big things that are soon to be happening with BYU championships and a lot of athletic glory that these teams are going to bring to BYU.
BYU has done amazing things without being in a Power 4 league. They have done amazing things without a full share of TV revenue. What are they going to do with it? Amazing things, as Spencer mentioned. So BYU is about to embark on some special times. Can't wait.
And you guys get a front row seat.
Yes, we do. We feel lucky. There have been some tough basketball, football seasons. We're going to be here no matter what. So when they win, it's even better.
Yes, there must be opposition in all things.
There must needs be.
We have to traverse through the bad times, the hard times, the difficult times to appreciate this awesome, momentous era that BYU has pushed into.
Well, great. Thank you both so much. This has been such a treat.
It was fun, Whitney. Thank you.
Yeah. Go Cougs. Thanks, Whitney.
Yeah. Thanks, Whitney.
Thank you for tuning in to the Y Magazine podcast. This episode accompanies the summer 2025 issue of Y Magazine, a whole issue dedicated to 150 years of BYU history. If you enjoyed this episode, you'll probably also enjoy our episode with Tom Holmoe, A Victory Story, and our conversation with Olympians Connor Mance and Clayton Young, fast friends. You'll also want to check out our 2023 episode with 3 different BYU coaches called BYU Joins the Big 12. This episode was produced by me, Whitney Singley Archibald, with Executive Director Brooklyn Hughes Romer. Editing by intern Olivia Flynn. Original music, mixing, and mastering by Jarrett Davis.